Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Nick Roloff. We are coming here live on a afternoon Friday following the joint practice with the Chicago Bears. There are a lot of takeaways that we need to break down, and we have to start out with the obvious one. The offense in Miami struggled. The Bears defense certainly got the better of the offense today. I'm not that shocked by this. Tyreek Hill did not practice. Austin Jackson obviously was out. He has been out for a while. So you're down two of your better starters, and it showed. And the Bears defense is no joke. The strong point of that football team is certainly their defense, although they did not have their top corner, Jaelan Johnson, in today's practice. Now, a couple of the notes from the takeaway or the joint practice on the defense outperforming the Dolphins offense is that Miami's O-line struggled a little bit. James Daniels was actually asked about that following the practice by media, and he made note that, there was a little bit more pressure than we would have wanted. So the Bears front of Montez Sweat, Grady Jarrett, Javon Dexter certainly got the better of this O-line. But I do want to give a little bit of, devil's advocate here around the Dolphins is defenses are always going to be ahead of offenses this early in camp. That is just how it works. And if we're going to be honest, Dolphins offense and normal offenses in the NFL usually don't hit their stride until a couple weeks into the regular season, which is why unders are good plays in week one of the football season. Just remember that. But there are a couple other notes from the Dolphins offense that I wanted to mention today. Tua Tagovailoa, after having one interception in camp with the own defense going up against, he threw 3 interceptions today going up against the Bears. Not great, obviously. Tremaine Edmonds got him in the end zone. One of their safeties, I think it was Kevin Byard, got him one time. So Tua definitely wasn't his sharpest today. I think a lot of that can be put on maybe a little added pressure from the opposing defensive line in Chicago, but there's no sugarcoating it. Tua was not solid today, and turning it over 3 times throughout practice, that is not going to fly. So hopefully he is just getting out the kinks and getting out the rust. And by the way, before we break down more practice, if you want more updates around the Dolphins, make sure you do subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. There's more coming from this Dolphins offense that struggled. Turnovers were the story of today. Alexander Mattison, who has arguably been your second best running back in camp behind Devon Achane, fumbled twice today. Not ideal there. He preached how that just won't happen again, and it can't happen again when he was talking to Dolphins media after the fact. But obviously not the signs that we wanted to see from the Dolphins offense. And if you watched our video yesterday of the 5 key storylines I was looking at heading into joint practice, I was very curious about how the Dolphins offensive line held up against a pretty solid front 4 in Chicago. I was also hoping that Tua clearly looked like the better quarterback between him and Caleb Williams. And it was not clear. I think Tua might have still outperformed them despite the 3 picks, because we'll get to the defense in here just a second. But the Bears offense got held in check by Miami. The point is, I don't think Tua clearly showed that he was the far and away better quarterback than Caleb Williams, so I am slightly disappointed with that. And then obviously when you combine the turnovers from Alexander Mattison and Tua, it is certainly not an ideal showing. Let's get to that Dolphins defense now, because they certainly outperformed the Bears offense. So both defenses dominated today. Miami was able to generate pressure at a pretty consistent rate, which is a very positive sign. That was another storyline that I was watching. I was like, the Dolphins defensive line has gotten the better of the Dolphins offensive line in camp so far. Would that translate with the defense going up against a different offensive line that is pretty improved with Darnell Wright, who wasn't really practicing in full today with an injury, but Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dolman, Braxton Jones, their rookie Ozzie Trapilo. So the fact that Miami's defense consistently got pressure with Jordan Brooks coming on blitzes, Bradley Chubb had a couple big plays today. That is inspiring confidence in me that this Dolphins defense might just be that good in the front 7. I've talked all offseason long about how I think Miami's front 7 is underrated and one of the best groups in the entire National Football League. I have a hard time finding a better edge trio in the football league. I mean, if you combine interior defensive linemen, you could have conversations across the league for sure, but a healthy Jaelan Phillips and Bradley Chubb paired up with the second-year Chop Robinson, just have a hard time believing that Miami won't have a top 10 pass rush in the NFL this upcoming season. So it was good to see that translate a little bit. The secondary held up for the most part as well. And speaking of secondary, Jack Jones got hurt, but it is fine. Now, I saw some people freaking out online. Jack Jones was carted off of practice, but David Ferrones, shout out to him by the way, said that he saw Jack Jones smiling on the cart as he was leaving the joint practice, and he said, well, if he's smiling, it means there's nothing serious and it's likely just cramps. Well, Jack Jones was actually asked on Twitter by a Dolphins fan, hey bro, how you feeling? Are you all good? He quote tweeted and said, yeah, all good, just some cramps. So disaster avoided for the Miami Dolphins. I have said throughout camp to this point, ever since he was signed, that I think Jack Jones has been one of the best corners on this football team, and if we were playing a game tomorrow, I would start him opposite of Storm Duck on the boundary with Mike Hilton in the slot. I know Kendall Sheffield was the CB2 in the starting one opposite of Duck in the initial depth chart, but that is unofficial, so I do not anticipate that sticking. I think Jack Jones is on the trajectory to be a starter on this Dolphins defense, and he's earned the right. He actually made a couple big hits in practice today. It was reported that he had one big hit that he came up and made a play that had the entire defense and entire sideline for Miami erupting. That is a positive development, because when you think of Jack Jones as a football player, you think of talent, ball skills when the ball is in the air, and cover, but you do not think physicality, and he does not tackle that well. So the fact that he is making the effort to really do that early in camp, thumbs up for me. And if you're happy that Jack Jones is healthy, spam those me's down in the comments section, by the way. All right, keep it going. Outside of that, Mike McDaniel got in the middle of a fight. I don't think I've ever seen this from Mike. Unbelievable. There was a couple fights today. And whenever you have joint practices, fights are just going to happen. I personally like him. I like them. I know some others out there aren't the biggest fan of training camp fights. It just shows competitiveness. It just shows that fire inside of you. And if you are prideful in your work, when you play that type of physical sport, or really any sport, there's just bound to be altercations. And I would be actually concerned if there was no altercations between Miami and Chicago today, because that tells me that maybe people just don't care enough. Maybe that's a hot take, I'm sorry. But the fact that Mike McDaniel sprinted in to break up the fight, that is something that I did not expect. I think most people would label McDaniel as a pretty boy type of coach, soft-minded, and I think that's fair. Like, it certainly looked that way throughout the first 3 years of being a head coach in the NFL, but him getting in the middle of a fight, Mike Vrabel style that we saw the other day in New England, like, that kind of brings a smile to my face. Come on, coach, show me something. I love it. Speaking of fights, Jordan Brooks fought his own teammate. Now, it was not reported who it was. Zach Sealer went in and broke up the two. But Jordan Brooks, I would argue the secondary leader of this defense. It would be Zach Sealer 1, Jordan Brooks 2. Apparently got into it with someone on the sideline on this defense. And Minkah Fitzpatrick was actually asked about it after practice and said that, hey, Jordan Brooks is a leader. He's fiery and he just holds people accountable. And sometimes people don't meet those standards. So it sounds like someone wasn't giving effort or wasn't doing what they needed to do. Jordan Brooks let him have it, and it ended up not being a fight, but like maybe some screaming, a little pushing and shoving, and it was ultimately broken up by the aforementioned leader, Zach Sealer. But obviously this defense holds itself to a high standard. Jordan Brooks does. I really like that. And, well, that ultimately ended up ending the practice. Final word on today's show. It sounds like Dolphin starters aren't going to be playing. It is not confirmed as I am filming this, but it was reported that Caleb Williams and some of the starters for Chicago is not going to play on Sunday in this preseason game, which means Miami starters aren't going to play. Both Mike and Ben Johnson talked before the joint practice and said, hey, we'll talk with the other head coach and kind of decide how we want to approach this preseason game on Sunday. So with Caleb Williams being reported as not playing on Sunday, I would likely guess that the starters for Miami aren't going to play, which means we're going to see probably a half of Zach Wilson, a half of Quinn Ewers, If that's not the case, maybe it's 3 quarters Wilson, 1 quarter Ewers. But if I'm Miami, I'm playing both a half, seeing what the two can do, and then probably have Ewers dominate a lot of the snaps going forward in the preseason. But that's going to kind of round out the show. Those were the main takeaways. Obviously, I can't read off and highlight every single play that was made, so there might be some misses out there in terms of people making good plays, people struggling a little bit, but these were the headlines. Mattison fumbled, Tua intercepted 3 times, Mike McDaniel fight, Jordan Brooks fight, Jack Jones carted away, but is fine, just cramps, so he will probably be ready to roll going forward. Good to see there. And hopefully next week for the Dolphins joint practice against the Detroit Lions, the offense performs at a little bit of a better rate. It will be a test because the Lions' defensive front is probably better than the Chicago Bears, but their secondary is a little bit banged up right now. A couple corners out for the year. One of their rookies, Rackenstraw. They also missed Levi Onwuzurike, if I said that right. He's out for the year, a player that I actually wanted Miami to sign for ANC. But that will do it for today's show. If you want more updates on the Miami Dolphins, make sure you follow me over on Twitter at Nick_Roloff. See you tomorrow with another video, and then Sunday we'll be live for the Dolphins-Bears preseason game 1 hour before. Remember, noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time for that 1 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. So join us on the channel.